It's during this holiday season that I wanted to share a few of the archaeological discoveries that took place in Israel that were significant this past year. And some of these get overlooked and we don't really hear about them in the media. So I'm going to share a couple of things that I found and ran across with you, and I hope that it blesses you a lot. The first one, this article from haaretz.com was posted by Ruth Schuster, January 21st of 2021, and it's titled Inscription to Jesus, dedicated by the, quote, miserable Thomas, end quote, found in northern Israel. A piece of the doorframe of an early church was reused in the wall of a luxury house in the late Byzantine or early Islamic period and has now been found during road work. Around 1,500 years ago, a beautiful family home was going up in the village of et-Taiba in the Jezreel Valley. As befitted a beautiful family home in the late Byzantine or early Islamic period in Palestine, the floors were tiled with decorative mosaics and the walls were suitably thick. And one of the walls of this manse incorporated a repurposed fragment of a lintel from a local church, which bore an inscription in Greek. The inscription read, "Christ, born of Mary." This work of the most God-fearing and pious Bishop Theodosius and the miserable Thomas was built from the foundation. Whoever enters should pray for them. The household couldn't have seen the poignant inscription because it lay with its face to the wall's interior. As said, the wall was thick. Dr. Walid Atrash of the Israel Antiquities Authority tells Haaretz. Moreover, the lintel fragment once bore a carved crucifix that stood proud of the stone surface, but is mostly no more. Could removing the cross and repurposing the lintel bit as a humble brick with its inscription inside have been an act of desecration? Well, I would say so. I mean, if it was the early Islamic period, they would want to completely deface it. Perhaps, but the parsimonious theory is that the builder couldn't have cared less what the stone had or didn't have on its surface and just reworked the fragment as a brick, which involved removing extraneous parts so it could sit with the other stones, Atrash suggests. I think maybe the builder didn't care about the inscription or the cross. They were just in the way. Well, it's not too hard to figure out that it was removed on purpose. The church once adorned with this evocative message was the earliest found so far in the village of et-Taiba, which is in the Jezreel Valley near Mount Tabor. This house of worship dated to the late 5th century CE, Atrash says. Most of the churches in the area, and they were legion, date to the 6th century CE. Incidentally, the discovery of the lintel inscription inside the house wall was serendipitous, found during an archaeological excavation directed by Lang and Haku of the Israeli Antiquities Authority ahead of construction of a new road in the village. And this happens a lot in Israel. The inscription, Christ born of Mary, was a formula intended to protect its readers from the evil eye, says Dr. Leah de Segni of Hebrew University, who interpreted the inscription. It was a common phrase in inscriptions and a greeting in documents at the time and refers to, of course, Jesus. Who on earth might the miserable Thomas have been, though? We can't know that, Dr. Segni says, but the inscription is formulaic in that respect too. The mysterious Thomas might have paid for the church, donated to it, paid for the doorframe, or who knows, and calling himself miserable was merely the self-effacement that was the norm for Greek inscriptions of the time. A suitably modest Christian believer wouldn't have called himself Lion of the Light or some other self-aggrandizing phrase. Calling himself lowly isn't unusual for the time, de Segni says. As for Theodosius, the founder of the church from which the inscription came, that's no mystery. He was the Archbishop of Bet-Shean, not the Roman emperor of the same name, who reigned from 379 to 395. Bishop Theodosius held supreme religious authority over the region in the late 5th century, certainly around 480 CE, and the region included et-Taiba. The dedication proves that Theodosius was actively building churches in the area of Mount Tabor, and this one was one of the earlier found so far. Most of the momentum in constructing churches was in the 6th century, Trash states. This is the first evidence of the Byzantine Church's existence in the village of et-Taiba, and it adds to other finds attesting to the activities of Christians who lived in the region, he added. The village of et-Taiba dates back to well before any of this happened, at least to the Iron Age, also known as the Israelite Age. That's when King David lived. The whole area is relatively lush, and this settlement developed as settlements do around a natural spring. A stream ran nearby as well. Come the Roman and Byzantine periods, the village was flourishing, with evidence of industrial agriculture, as the Trash puts it, including flour mills built along the stream, oil and wine presses, and that sort of thing. The settlement continued through to the Crusader period, but he had built a church of their own, and the Byzantine-era church was forgotten with a bit of its door frame in that house. Finding the inscription is the first evidence of a Byzantine period church in the town, Atrash says, adding that nobody in their right mind would have lugged a great stone with a precious inscription on it from elsewhere only to use it as a brick with its significance hidden in the wall's innards. The church must have been local. And how do we know it was a church, not a monastery? The inscription greets those who enter and blesses them. It is therefore clear that the building is a church and not a monastery. Churches greeted believers at their entrance, while monasteries tended not to do this, Dr. Segni explains. Presumably, Bishop Theodosius of Bet-Shean also urged the construction of monasteries in the region, but the lintel did not come from one. On the other hand, recently, the second monastery there was found by Moti Avaim of the Kinneret College and Narit Fag of the Israeli Antiquities Authority. Certainly a small village, even near the sacred Mount Tabor, wouldn't have had more than one monastery, but the identification of Kfar Kama with Helenopolis isn't a done deal. We don't have enough information yet, says Atrash. Another possibility is that Helenopolis is the village of Tabaria. Another possibility is that Helenopolis is the village of Dabaria. And what happened to the Byzantine church from which the broken lintel piece was taken? It was probably destroyed by an earthquake, Atrash says. Certainly the area is prone to devastating tremors. It would have been too deteriorated to rebuild, so its parts were reused in other construction, which was very much the norm. But there's another possibility, is that the Islamic invaders came in and destroyed churches and defaced crosses, and this piece could have been used as a brick because they didn't care, and they were trying to hide the cross in the name of Jesus and Christ, born of Mary, inscription. Let's have a look at the inscription. And this was hidden, like this inscription was facing the wall where nobody could see it until this excavation happened. A very significant find. Let me get a close-up of this inscription. It's in Greek. And this is credited to the Israeli Antiquities Authority. In this photo is the excavation site, and you can see the mosaic floor over on the bottom right-hand side towards the center. You can get a little close-up of that. These pictures were all credited to the Israeli Antiquities Authority. Here are the excavators excavating at the site. So that's that story about that archaeological find. And by the way, that article mentions that Mount Tabor is the site traditionally of the Transfiguration, and I'm here to tell you that it absolutely is not. And I have very good proof in my book and telling you where the real place was where this took place. So let me just finish up by telling you that that inscription that you just saw read, Christ, or Messiah, born of Mary. This work of the most God-fearing and pious Bishop Theodosius and the miserable Thomas was built from the foundation. Then it says ... Whoever enters should pray for them. Maybe they needed prayer because invaders were destroying churches at the time. And it's likely that this was deliberately hidden, facing inward to where nobody could see it, as if it was just a regular brick in the wall. So there you have it, one of the coolest archaeological finds of 2021.